In the middle of covering a shocking, salacious murder case known as the Surrey Six, Kim takes us behind the scenes and gives us a rare peek into the life of a gang reporter. That's this week on Crime Story, available wherever you get your podcasts.
You know the feeling of finding a really good podcast? Or the feeling of someone always being there, like your favorite radio show? Stream CBC Podcasts, CBC Music, and CBC Radio anytime, anywhere. Download the CBC list.
This is CBC News. At 12 o'clock, we're at 17 degrees with mostly clear skies over downtown Winnipeg. Good afternoon, I'm Matt Humphrey. Almost 1 year after the horrific fatal crash near Carberry, RCMP say they turned over the results of their investigation to the Crown, minus one important piece. 17 people were killed and 8 were injured when a bus of seniors collided with a semi on the Trans-Canada Highway at Highway 5. Rob Lasson is Superintendent of Major Crime Services in Manitoba. He says officers talked to some survivors, but not the bus driver.
We have not been able to speak to the driver, unfortunately, and that's based on his ongoing medical condition, and we won't be able to talk to the driver.
Lasson expects the Crown will release its decision soon. He's confident Mounties have got answers to all the questions about the crash raised by family of the victims and the public. The grandmother of Mercedes Myron says she's elated. The search of the Prairie Green landfill will finally happen. The remains of Myron and Morgan Harris are believed to be in the landfill. They were murdered by admitted serial killer Jeremy Skibicki more than 2 years ago. This week, Donna Bartlett and other family members of the women went to the landfill to see the start of the process. She says it's been a difficult 2 years.
I'm sorry, I'm getting emotional. I just know it was a long 2 years. The trial was hard. 2 years of doing everything was hard. Like fighting with cancer, fighting to search a landfill. And now we're going to get it done. I am so happy.
Bartlett hopes the search begins in July or August. In the meantime, they'll be preparing Myron's grave in the Yellow Quill Cemetery at Long Plain First Nation. A Manitoba-based storm chaser says he's never seen anything in Canada like what he witnessed yesterday. Jordan Carruthers was following the severe thunderstorms which first formed near the Saskatchewan border. He says the first one he saw north of Rivers was very brief. Then 2 other tornadoes came out of that same storm cell east of Rivers. Finally, Carruthers says they saw the 4th and largest one near Swan Lake First Nation.
Very uncommon. I have never... in my 15 years of chasing, I have never seen 4 tornadoes in one day in anywhere in Canada. I've seen it a few times down in the States in Tornado Alley where it's a lot more common.
Carruthers is predicting a busy tornado season for Manitoba and the prairies this year because of all the moisture. At the G7 summit in southern Italy today, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau met with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, French President Emmanuel Macron, and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky.
Vladimir, it's always such a pleasure to see you.
Pleasure. Thank you for your support, and of course, all the Canadians. Thanks your people that you supported our people from the very beginning of this full-scale invasion of Russia.
Today's G7 agenda was dominated by the war in Ukraine. It included a proposal to use frozen Russian assets to help fund the Ukrainian war effort. That would see close to $70 billion made available to Kyiv, with Canada's contribution worth an estimated $5 billion. The United States Supreme Court has preserved access to a medication used in about 2/3 of all abortions in the U.S. Anti-abortion groups wanted to sue the Federal Food and Drug Administration for approving mifepristone, but the Supreme Court ruled they did not have the legal right to sue the FDA. British Columbia is setting a new mandatory minimum wage for gig workers. Those are people like rideshare drivers or food delivery people who are treated as independent contractors and not employees. Starting September 3rd, the minimum wage will be $20.88 an hour. Scott Peterson has more.
This is the first of its kind in Canada, and BC basically saying they want to level the playing field. The gig economy obviously is here to stay. So this is a whole new host of worker protections coming out with $20.88 is the minimum pay now. That's 20% higher than the minimum wage, because the assumption here is a lot of these gig workers are using their own transportation, their own vehicles or their own bicycles or electric vehicles, whatever it may be. Also, the workers no longer have to blindly accept a job. They must see the location and the price of the job first. Also, there's an assurance that all the tips and any of the tips go directly to the workers involved. And the BC government expects that this is going to help about 11,000 ride-hailing drivers across the province, 35,000 delivery workers. This is going to be interesting to see if other provinces follow suit. There's close to 2.5 million people involved in the last 12 months in the gig economy. Scott Peterson, CBC News, Toronto.
And finally, this week marks the 30th anniversary of releasing sturgeon into northern Manitoba rivers. The Nelson River Sturgeon Board was created in the early 1990s to help the prehistoric fish after overfishing and habitat loss threatened the species. Tom Scott is the son of the late founder, Ernie Scott.
We're the original ecologists of the land. We are the ones that are trying to keep and protect our nature from all kinds of different things, all the different kinds of harms.
Hundreds of year-old sturgeon, or sturgeon fry, were released into the river this week to mark the anniversary. The sturgeon released could live in the rivers for the next century. In Winnipeg, a high of 21 today, mainly sunny, a slim chance of a scattered shower at times or a thunderstorm. In Brandon, a chance of showers, a high of 19 with a risk of thunder. Dauphin, a high of 20 with a few clouds and a risk of thunder. Flin Flon, a chance of showers, a high of 20. Thompson, a mix of sun and cloud, a high of 17. And in Churchill, a high of 10 with a mix of sun and cloud.
Hello, Manitoba. Thanks for joining us today for Radio Noon here on CBC Radio 1. I'm Janet Stewart. A Statistics Canada survey shows positive effects of working from home on well-being. We want to hear your stories. What did remote work change for you? Join our calling conversation after the 12:30 news and weather. Have you ever thought about writing a book? Andy Blick and a friend spent a year and a half documenting the stories of people who live in a place they love. The story behind Gimli, A Year in Pictures, is coming up. But first, as the anniversary of the worst bus crash in Manitoba history draws near, we ask an RCMP superintendent about his memories of June 15th, 2023. Saturday will mark 1 year since the bus crash near Carberry, Manitoba that left 17 people dead and 8 others injured. On June 15th, 2023, that bus departed Dauphin for a day of fun. 25 people on board, most of them seniors from the Dauphin area, were heading to a casino on a day trip. But at the intersection of the Trans-Canada Highway and Highway 5, everything changed. The bus collided with a semi-trailer. In the minutes following what was the worst bus crash in Manitoba history, first responders and medical staff launched a massive effort to save the injured. Superintendent Rob Lawson has spent the past hour reflecting with members of the media on the aftermath of that terrible collision. And he joins us now live by phone. Thank you for being with us, sir.
Good morning, Janet.
Where were you on June 15th, 2023?
On June 15th, 2023, I was in my office managing a number of emails, like always, and the regular meetings of the day when I was notified, when I first saw the report come over my email that numerous casualties were being reported on Highway 1 at the location of the crash.
So that's what it said? Did it really give a sense of the magnitude, that first report?
It didn't give exact details, but what I could read from the content that this was something that was going to be very large in scale, requiring a large police response. And that's when I started activating my experts in major case management and started contacting partners and outside agencies. I knew this was going to be a multifaceted response.
It was, in fact, very multifaceted. How many different agencies were involved?
You know, Janet, I can't even count. I was trying to go through that this morning, and it was just so overwhelming. But what I can say, the number of agencies, private, government, that jumped on board to help each other in unified matter was astonishing. And that partnership and relationship building through a tragic event is now a best practice, you know, across Canada in managing these types of events.
In an emergency like this, have you ever dealt in your years with the RCMP with something quite this big, with so many agencies involved?
No, personally, I haven't. And I've been involved in a lot of tragic, violent incidents over the years, but I can say this was the most extensive, widespread event that I've ever dealt with. And on a personal note, this is probably the event that's attached to me personally with the greatest magnitude.
Why?
Well, you know, what were we responding to is, you know, multiple people, like you said in your opening comments, that were driving from Dauphin for a day of fun at a casino. People that were just going around their day, and tragedy just happened, and the community was shattered. The community of Dauphin as a whole, and the province, and the country, quite frankly. So, me being responsible ultimately for the investigation, I really own this, and I still do to this day.
You've got so many years of training. How many years have you been with the RCMP?
I'll have 25 years here shortly, Janet.
You've seen a lot. You've experienced a lot. And yet this crash was different.
Yes, absolutely. And you know what? It's very important, and I have to credit my healing experience with the community and the family, and that was a best practice that we took. Is when we engaged quickly with the family and formulated a family liaison team. I knew that, you know, the community in Dauphin was supporting the RCMP, and through that I felt like I was supported, even though as a manager I didn't have the direct link to the community, but it was definitely felt, and the support back was overwhelming.
It is tied to you so tightly, and you weren't even the first one on the scene. Nowadays, first responders like yourself, even people with so much experience, especially people perhaps with so much experience, are encouraged to express their emotions and talk about things in ways that we didn't do in the past. What have you heard from colleagues who actually were among the first to arrive there?
Well, initially, when we did our initial critical debriefing, there was our members that attended were exposed to extreme trauma at a level that you can't prepare for. And we implemented our RCMP best practices internally to assess and look after the members that were involved. And we continue to monitor them. We have peer-to-peer response, and we have counseling available for our investigators. And we have to just come together as a family as well as an organization to support one another.
In the 25 years ago, would you have used that same language? It just strikes me that the force has grown a lot.
Absolutely. The force has grown in a very positive way in that regard. When I first started, we did have that at our, attention or whatever, but you were trained to be resilient and to kind of, deal with it, quite frankly. But the RCMP over the last number of years, we've made great strides with encouraging, mental health, well-being, and to be open and honest about your feelings, so we can get ahead of any emotional trauma that's going to be lingering with our members that could ultimately affect them personally, their families, and the public.
With the anniversary drawing so near, Saturday will be 1 year. What are you thinking?
Well, the main thing on my mind, Janet, is the victims themselves. I was exposed and I saw all the pictures when I attended Dauphin personally for the memorial shortly after the event. That sticks in my mind personally. But I also feel for all the families that are out there. I also feel for the driver of the bus who has, suffered severe medical trauma. And I also feel for, the driver of the semi that was involved in the accident as well. So there's a multiple individuals that relate to me as a result of that incident.
Where are we in terms of the investigation into the crash?
So like I said at the very beginning, this investigation, the main purpose or priority behind it was to give accurate answers to the family and to the public And when I speak about requiring accurate answers, that takes time. Investigational processes often take time to gather evidence to provide those answers. So I believe that we have I'm confident that we have a thorough disclosure package that we provided to Manitoba prosecutions and Crown for their review, and we're just waiting on their feedback and any further direction on that. But I'm really hoping that we're going to have some answers that we can provide back to the family. And on that, I want to take the opportunity to thank them for their unwavering patience and understanding of the process. And the RCMP wouldn't have been able to do this without their support.
The driver of the bus, as you mentioned, has suffered severe injuries. It was found, am I correct, that it was found that the driver of the truck had the right of way?
The driver of the semi-truck did, yes. That evidence was revealed very early on. And that's why we felt important and made a very difficult decision about whether we could or should release that information to the public. But we felt that the family and the public needed to know that. And we took a risky decision to do that. But I think in the end, that was also deemed a best practice when I speak to other agencies about how we managed the communication of the incident.
And looking back, all the review you've done, is there anything that could have been done better?
You know what, the RCMP, we're always open to feedback and we can always do better. But what I can say is we did a lot of good things that day. And like I said, they've been adopted nationwide as best practices. So we're going to continue to build from that. And one of them is our relationship with the families. I feel we did a good job there. Right after the incident, we built a family liaison program where every family had a direct link to an RCMP officer. And that created that human connection. And I think the concept of family moving through this event.
Superintendent Rob Lawson, thanks for your time today.
You're welcome. Thank you, Janet.
Superintendent Rob Lawson is the officer in charge of RCMP Major Crime Services. He's also the acting criminal operation officer for the Manitoba RCMP.
Your local news at your fingertips.
CBC News has a local news app made for your phone or tablet.
So don't waste time scrolling for the local stories you want. Just download the app to get the information that matters to you when it happens.
And how you want it.
Another way to get your local news. The CBC News app. Download it today.
It is 12:17. You're listening to Radio Noon. My name is Janet Stewart. Still to come today, the book is called Gimli, A Year in Pictures. Creating it took a lot longer than a year. The stories it shares were often a lifetime in the making. We meet one of the people behind this labor of love coming up next. We're going to talk now a little bit about the weather forecast. We had so much dramatic weather going through our province late yesterday. If you saw any of those storms, we'd love to see your photos. Please send them. You can send them right to me, janet.stewart@cbc.ca. Today's much calmer. It's mainly sunny with a slim chance of scattered showers and the risk of a thunderstorm this afternoon in Winnipeg. Tomorrow will be mainly sunny and 26 degrees. Saturday looks like it'll be cloudy with sunny breaks. There's a slim chance of showers with the risk of a thunderstorm lingering in the afternoon as well. 28 degrees is a high, so it could be a very warm one on Saturday with a bit of a wind. Sunday will be cloudy with sunny breaks, and Monday a mix of sun and cloud. Our calling conversation today is about remote work versus in-office work on well-being. We want to hear your stories. Join our call-in conversation and let us know, what has telework meant to you? What's your experience been like with you or your co-workers working from home? Call our call-in conversation after the 12:30 news and weather. It's a dream many people have, writing a book, capturing stories that are dear to their hearts and making it through the publication process. Our next guest actually made that dream a reality. Andy Blick is a filmmaker and a retired CBC television producer. His friend TJ Fergala is a realtor. They have different backgrounds, but a shared love of the community they live in. And together they've produced and published a book entitled Gimli, A Year in Pictures. Co-author Andy Blick joins us now from his home in Gimli. Thanks so much for joining us, Andy. Oh, I think we might have had an internet freeze up. There he is. Andy Blick, can you hear us? Andy, you're muted. As a former television... Look, man, if Terry Stapleton, our former colleague, worked with both of us as a TV producer, knew that you hadn't unmuted, I'm just teasing you. Andy Blick, filmmaker, author, thank you for joining us for Radio Noon.
Glad to be here, Janet.
It's wonderful to hear your voice. Tell us about this book. Why did you want to put together a book about Gimli?
Well, TJ and I both really love this place, and we love living here. And we just thought it'd be an interesting project to spend a year photographing the community and listening to people's stories, and then create a book that we could reflect back to them, the experience. And that's what we did. It's sort of a nonprofit project. It took us a long time. It was a lot of work, and we just released it.
And how do you feel having just released it?
Relieved on one level. It was a ton of work, but excited too, and pleased that people seem to really like it. And it's just great to have done it and to do this for our town. And I really would encourage others in other communities to give this a try.
Really? What did you find so important about it?
Well, it was a bit of an experiment. Like we didn't know whether we'd get enough interesting content. You know, it's a small community, a well-known community too. And so we just embarked on this journey, this search. We interviewed about 85 different stories and people and took their pictures. And as we did the project, it emerged that that everyone has a good story to tell if you just dig deep enough, and that the community itself is a little different than we expected it to be when we started doing the digging.
Oh, that is interesting. How long have you lived in Gimli?
I've been coming here most of my adult life, but I've lived here since 2012.
Okay, but there are things you learned and discovered about this community that you thought you knew so well. What did you learn that you didn't know already?
Well, I think as most people know, like this community is unique. It has this Icelandic heritage and a strong Ukrainian heritage as well. But really, it's really become a much more diverse and interesting place. And one of the other things we learned was that what a destination it is, that people come here from, particularly in the summer, but increasingly in the winter, from everywhere, either to see family or come back or just to visit this place. It has a reputation of being a great place to be in the summertime. And those people were here, and we went down to the beach and photographed there, and there were literally people from around the world, you know, on the beach, and we talked to them about coming here and experiencing this. And it's really neat for the community to have that and to have those folks here, to be a part of our life here. And we're looking forward to seeing them soon if we ever get some decent weather.
Apparently it's coming. I just looked at the forecast and it looks like it's coming. You are a storyteller. You have been for longer than I've known you. The stories you heard must have been magical, meeting these people. Can you share one with us?
I think Anna Stevens really sticks out in my mind. When we interviewed her, she was 100 years old, now 101. And it was just her attitude towards life, just such a positive attitude. You know, she gets up every day. She says, I just love people, and goes out down and has coffee with her friends in the Rotary Towers. And you just get that sense of how important that is to have that kind of positive outlook, to love people and be surrounded by family. And what's interesting about her is that her mom, her late mom, died at 109. She was one of the oldest living Icelanders in the world, I think the only one at the time. And, you know, that's the kind of detail that comes out when you do this, and you learn things about people that are greater than just the community. And the other thing that really was great was, and I think that really struck me, was the relationship between Indigenous people and the community here, that on both Canada Day and on National People's Indigenous Day here, it was just how the two communities came together. They were very well attended, both of those things. And just watching that happen was, you had that sense of, well, it's on these kinds of things that reconciliation will work, when the different cultures come together, and just reach out to each other.
It's Gimli, a year in pictures. Tell us about the photos. This is radio, and anyone watching on YouTube and anyone who's curious can go after the interview and find CBC Manitoba in YouTube. You'll find the photos there. We're sharing some of them. Can you describe perhaps a couple that you find extraordinary?
Yeah, I mean, it was, it's the beauty of this place. We shot in winter and we shot in summer, spring and fall. TJ's a great photographer, and he did the majority of the photography work. I did about 50 of the pictures. I did most of the interviewing, but it's the beauty of this place where we captured that, and it was just, and we enjoyed doing that, sort of reflecting back to ourselves and the community. Look at where we live. And then he's a great portrait photographer. There are some great pictures of people like Kirk Creed, who's a potter, an amazing potter, has an outdoor kiln. We shot with him one night when he was firing. And those pictures, they're, for me, they're magic. They really tell the story in an intimate kind of way. And that's what really worked for me. And I think it works for the book. That's the feedback that we're getting, that it's that kind of a project.
You're getting positive feedback. Where can people buy this book if they're interested?
At the moment, we just released it. So it's at H.P. Turkison and Son store. I think most people know Gimli, know the store, that it's for sale in the store at the moment. And at some point in the future, we're hoping to have it in the stores in Winnipeg.
That store is a landmark in Gimli for anybody who has visited. You know that place that used to be the general store 100 years ago. It was there. I know you've seen your name in the credits of other creative projects. What's it like, as a guy who loves Gimli, to walk by that store and see the poster in the window of your book?
It's a great feeling, and it's really great to do something for your community and to engage. And we met people we never would have met if we hadn't done the project. And I have to say, it's a little nerve-wracking too, because you do this, and it's not like some anonymous piece that you and I would do for the network or something like that. I'm going to be on the streets of town. If people didn't like it, I'm going to hear about it. But so far, the feedback has been great. And I think people, they get it. They kind of get why we did this. And we're getting that kind of feedback, that it is a panoramic view of the community. You really get a sense, a snapshot. It's not everybody. It's a snapshot of what this place is like.
Andy Blick, we're so grateful that you could share this snapshot with us.
Thanks, Janet. Nice to be here.
Please give our best to TJ Fergala. Am I saying his last name correctly?
Yes.
Wonderful. TJ Fergala is the co-author of this book, took many of the beautiful photographs you described. Please congratulate him, too. Take care, Andy.
I will. Thanks, Janet.
Andy Blick and his friend TJ Fergala co-wrote the book Gimli, A Year in Pictures. Right now, let's have a little music.
I get sad in summer and the fall. Never used to bother me at all. Glad that I won't walk those halls again. Never knew I'd lose all of my friends. I don't mean to dwell, I just like to tell a simple story. July Tuesdays walking through the mall, sneak into the movie, see them all. Paradise by dashboard lights comes on. midnight songs. Are those times not meant to last? Do I romanticize the past? Do I fantasize the facts? Stay too long for red roses, a little more than the rest of us. Taking back Sunday and boys like girls. Soundtrack to a perfect little world.
That is Two Crows for Comfort, Summer and Fall. You're listening to Radio Noon. We want to hear from you for our call-in conversation. We're talking about the impact of working from home on well-being. What did remote work change for you? What do you think of hybrid workplaces? That has some of us working from home, some of us not. What's that like for you? Share your stories after the 12:30 news and weather at 204-780-0893. Right now, it's 12:30.
This is CBC News. At 12:30, we're at 19 degrees with mostly clear skies over downtown Winnipeg. Good afternoon, I'm Matt Humphrey. RCMP say we will never hear an account of last year's fatal crash near Carberry from the driver of the bus. 17 people were killed and 8 injured when a bus of seniors from the Dauphin area collided with a semi on the Trans-Canada at Highway 5. Rob Lasson is Superintendent of Major Crime Services in Manitoba. He says the RCMP investigation results were turned over to the Crown. Lasson says officers talked to some survivors, but not the bus driver.
We have to respect the privacy of the driver, but I can say that the results of the accident inflicted some severe medical issues for the driver, and he's not able to provide those answers that we would like.
Lasson expects the Crown will release its decision soon. He's confident the RCMP got answers to all the questions raised about the crash. It's been 2 long years, but the family of Mercedes Myron are excited to the search for her remains will begin soon. Myron and Morgan Harris were killed by admitted serial killer Jeremy Skibitsky, and their remains are believed to be in the Prairie Green landfill. Myron's grandmother, Donna Bartlett, says the battle to get the landfill searched has taken its toll. She and other family members went to Prairie Green earlier this week to see the preparations for the search.
To see it again and to know where she is, which area, it was hard. But I was just thinking, okay, we're going to get you home, my girl. We're going to get you home. That was my main thought, and that was good, because we know it's going to be done.
Bartlett says they've been preparing Myron's grave in the Yellow Quill Cemetery on Long Plain First Nation. She hopes the search of the section where the remains may be will begin in July or August. And it was a busy evening for Manitoba storm chaser Jordan Carruthers. Yesterday, a severe storm made its way through southern Manitoba. Carruthers says he saw his first of 4 tornadoes form near rivers. He says it was short-lived, but soon after, 2 more tornadoes formed. Carruthers says he then chased another into the Pembina Valley.
We tracked it all the way down to Swan Lake, where it eventually put down a very large, fully condensed tornado that did end up doing some damage to the Swan Lake Reserve area.
No one was hurt in any of the tornadoes. Carruthers has been chasing storms for 15 years and says he's never seen 4 tornadoes from the same storm in Canada before. He's predicting a busy tornado season because of all the moisture. And that's your CBC News from Winnipeg.
Thank you very much.
Have you ever seen a tornado?
I never have,
Nor
but I
have
am
I.
looking right now at an absolutely dramatic photo just emailed in by Westman Storm Chasers. Jeff Plass sent it.
Oh, wow.
Fantastic. I'll show it to you later.
Yeah, I'll have to take a look.
Yeah, absolutely gorgeous. These dramatic clouds, the red and the blue and the gray. Riley Lachuk is our weather specialist. He's just arrived in the studio, and Riley, these photos, they're really dramatic.
Some pretty spectacular images coming from some of those thunderstorms tomorrow. Still waiting for confirmation on how many tornadoes exactly touch down in southwestern and south central Manitoba, but in that neighborhood of 4 to 5 yesterday. So,
wow. We're really lucky we haven't heard more reports of damage.
Yes. A lot of these, touch down in fields and open areas where there weren't a lot of homes nearby, not a lot of people nearby, with the exception of that one that touched down at Swan Lake through the late afternoon yesterday, which damaged Powwow Arbor and home.
And unfortunately, a home as well.
Yes.
I hadn't heard about that. I knew about the powwow, and they're only days away from their big annual powwow.
Yes. So we'll bring you more on that tonight on the TV News at 6. Nothing quite that volatile today, Janet. We're looking at pretty stark contrast, sort of much different conditions across the south today. Yes, we could see another scattered shower or two across southern Manitoba, maybe a rumble of thunder, but nothing as severe as we saw yesterday. Right now, we're just seeing really just a few clouds across southern Manitoba. Into northwestern Ontario, though, we are seeing a few pop-up showers, as expected, a few rumbles of thunder coming out of these storms or out of these cells as well. So just keep that in mind. It's all sort of southeast of Kenora into Fort Francis, Atikokan. So it kind of moved out of cottage country, but still nonetheless a chance we could see some of that rolling through as we get into the evening and into the later afternoon, especially through today. Chance of that happening across southern Manitoba as well. Maybe a few pop-up showers, maybe a few bouts of light rain the further west you are. But as I was kind of describing on the TV news last night, it's the kind of showers that are going to be, you might see a few raindrops one moment and 5 minutes later you're back to sunshine. So nothing worth canceling your plans over, but certainly the risk there for maybe a few showers or a rumble of thunder through the afternoon today. Tomorrow, mainly sunny skies. Saturday's looking mainly sunny as well, above seasonal. Slim chance on Saturday we could see another shower or two through the later part of the day. Right now, 18 in Winnipeg, 19 in Brandon this hour. Thompson and Tuduli Lake both at 11 degrees. Churchill's at 5, looking to a high of 9 this afternoon. Northern Manitoba looking at 17s and 18s with varying amounts of sun and cloud depending on where you are throughout the day. Mix of sun and cloud across the south as well. 21s in the southwest corner of the province, 21 in Winnipeg as well. Maybe a few lingering showers into northwestern Ontario. And then Janet, if you like the heat, 26 for Friday, 28 for Saturday with a chance of showers, maybe a thunderstorm, and 25 for Sunday.
That's just the kind of heat that might bring a really dramatic thunderstorm.
Yeah, I did put that risk of a thunderstorm Saturday evening once again because conditions will be there, especially with that daytime heating.
Riley Lachuk, thank you so much.
No problem.
Riley Lachuk is our weather specialist here at CBC Manitoba. He'll be back during Up to Speed today. That's the program that airs during your drive home. If you have to drive home, if you're not working remotely, Up to Speed airs 3 to 6 p.m. here on CBC Radio 1. Host Faith Fundal speaks with Riley Lachuk and all kinds of other interesting people about the news and events of the day. Employees who work remotely save commute time. They can even sleep longer compared to their non-teleworking counterparts. And that's even true in Manitoba, where commutes are not as long as they are in places like, say, Ontario or BC. Statistics Canada confirmed this. It has new data from its time use survey, which it released just earlier this month. It's been in the news over the last few days. StatsCan also found that people who work remotely get to spend more time with their kids, and they do chores and leisure activities more often. What has telework meant to you? What have you experienced working from home? And if you've been brought back to work in an office after working from home, what has that change been like for you? Please tell us your story. We want to hear from you today. 204-780-0893. Again, 204-780-0893. Our guest today is Jennifer Moss. She's an author and speaker who specializes in the areas of workplace culture and well-being. Thank you for joining us by Zoom today.
Oh, I'm thrilled to be here.
What areas of this StatsCan report did you find the most interesting?
I found the fact that we're getting 2.5 more hours per week on leisure time. I thought that was really fascinating in that we don't realize for most of us, we don't spend enough time on leisure activity. And according to research, specifically Tal Ben-Shahar's research on our happiness set point, which is a big predictor of our life satisfaction and longevity, that we should be spending at least 2 hours each week on our hobbies and on leisure activities to increase our happiness set point, to increase our life satisfaction. So learning that there was this correlation between being able to access that and that it has such a big impact on us from working remotely. And I think what was also really fascinating was just that, this has been 10 years since the time use survey was actually enacted. And here we are in this post-pandemic era, and teleworking is such a big part of the data set. We would have not seen that, 10 years ago. And the fact that it's the big headline now says a lot about our world and how much it's changed in the last decade.
We have a caller who's been very patient. Ariel, thank you so much for calling Radio Noon.
Hi.
Hi. What would you like to share about telework?
Oh, working remotely has absolutely improved my life and my family's life.
How so?
Oh, everything you said in the introduction. And basically, no commute time. The commute time is booting up the computer. Has changed our kids' lives. My son used to be at least the last kid and to be picked up from daycare, and probably the kid who spent the most time there. Now he spends definitely less time there. A little bit more now, more recently. But cutting out that commute time has just made our family life so much better. My husband and I both get to work remotely, and I see that as a privilege. And we are essentially returning some of that commuting time into work time. So instead of time that we would be on the road, it's time that we are putting in those extra hours to get the work done.
I know some people, when they first started working from home, were having trouble with boundaries, with knowing when to stop working. Have you found that?
So the work that I do is in the health information technology sphere. So at the beginning of the pandemic, it was extraordinarily relevant, and there were long hours. And I'm fortunate enough that I set boundaries on work several years ago. So once the work was done, I was able to just shut off the computer and walk away from it. So for anyone who's having trouble with the boundaries, it's just set yourself a space and turn the computer off and walk away, and that's your boundary.
We hear the wonderful sounds of a baby with you as well.
Yes, unfortunately, I'm on maternity leave right now, and so I am a little concerned about what awaits me when I go back to work.
How so?
I've heard rumblings that there will be a hybrid model introduced, and I do have some thoughts on that. I definitely want to see my colleagues, but we've used Microsoft Teams, so we can video call with each other, and we did, when we were allowed to get together, we did get together. So I'm not sure what work is going to be like in a hybrid space. I'm very comfortable in my home office, and trying to work in a different space some days and then a home office space on different days, I think will just cause a whole new new learning for sure.
You've enjoyed this time so much and found it productive and good for your family. How big of a game changer would it be for you in terms of your career if work said you must come back to the office?
Well, I mean, I do enjoy my work, and I do need to work, as we all do. So, I mean, it is something that we will make it work. But if there's any room for preference, I absolutely want to continue working, at least in this line of work, where we use electronic documentation, we share documents, through email and other platforms. So we don't specifically need to be in the same room together. So for jobs and work where you don't need to be physically in the same place, that's what I see the true benefit.
Thank you, Ariel, for calling Radio Noon today.
My pleasure. I'm so happy to share my positive vibes. I hope other people feel that too.
Jennifer Moss, in your experience, does what we just heard from Ariel sound like what you've heard from others?
Oh, all of this resonates. What I hear anecdotally, and I'm writing this next book, then the title is Why Are We Here? And the reason why I wrote that title is that so many people are saying, why am I here? What is the point of work? I'm not connected to what I'm doing. And there's this, return to office mandate. And it feels so arbitrary when I was so productive and healthy and had all of this great rapport with my team. And then the idea, that I'm supposed to go back into the office or in person to increase cohesion, or I'm going to be more productive, and all of these reasons, they haven't been ringing true for people. And all of the data even in the last year, there's been some really compelling data to show that returning to office and getting people there even 2 days a week is detrimental to productivity. It's detrimental to cohesion. It reduces trust. It actually makes your high performers more likely to quit. And women and Gen Zs are more likely to leave. And a lot of that is because that flexibility is really helpful, particularly for parents, to be able to get that extra time. And so I think we need to think differently about what it looks like to have hybrid. Hybrid doesn't need to be 2 or 3 days in the week, in the office a week. It could be gathering people together, just like the last caller was saying, is we get together when we can, once a quarter. And they were finding that happiness was higher across the board in employees, and productivity, engagement were all higher if people just met for 3 or 4 days, once every couple of months, to get that connection and bonding. You do team building stuff, you have lunch together, you hang out, and then you go back to doing things remotely. And that is actually what they found with the research, the best framework for hybrid.
What do you think of this, Manitoba? You're listening to Jennifer Moss, and you just heard Ariel talking about the benefits of people working from home. Weigh in on this conversation. What's it been like for you? Do you have the option to work at home? If you don't, how do you feel about perhaps some of your coworkers or others in the company being able to do it, and you don't have that option? Weigh in on our conversation, 204-780-0893. Toll free, you can call 1-800-268-5483. Ken has been patient. Ken, thank you for calling Radio Noon.
Yeah, you're welcome.
What do you think of remote work?
I think it's the best thing there ever was. I'm currently retired now, but I worked for around 25 years from home, and it was the best there was. I loved it.
Can I ask what you did?
I worked in the agricultural industry. I worked with producers. And so there was some travel involved, and there was some late night meetings, which would make it hard to have a regular hours at a day job. I would have meetings at night and whatnot. But basically, if I wasn't on the road, I was at a desk. So I wasn't seeing people in person at my workplace, so it didn't matter where I did my job, as long as my job got done.
Did you find it isolating at all?
Not in the least. The isolation was refreshing. I liked the fact that I could be on my own and not have somebody constantly, around. And I mean, not that I didn't. I have worked in offices, and I enjoyed working with my workmates, but I like my solitude, so it was great. Yeah.
What do you think? When you hear that people might be mandated to go back, if somebody in your position your boss had said, "Hey, Ken, we need you to come in now," how would that have been for you?
It would have been really quite hard. I would have had to think long and hard about whether I would go in or not. My homework was spread over 2 jobs. So the second job, for the first couple of years I had it, I did work in an office, and I went in every day. And then they approached me and said, you want to work at home? And I said, absolutely, let me work at home. And so I would go in once a week for a weekly meeting, and hang out with all my workmates and that kind of thing. But if I had been forced to go back once I had been already at home, it would have been a really tough thing to do.
Ken, thank you so much for calling Radio Noon.
Oh, you're welcome. It was my pleasure.
Jennifer Moss, here in Manitoba right now, we are feeling pressure. We are feeling that mandate return to work coming from as high up as our premier, saying publicly that he doesn't really like hybrid workplaces. He worries about the culture and the divisions that it might create. We have downtown businesses, and that's a real thing. Many businesses in our downtown have been badly hurt by people going away from the downtown and not coming back. It's very hard on restaurants and the businesses that rely on workers to stay afloat. What do you think about the mandate to return to work?
I've been seeing this from province to province too. I mean, Ottawa and the federal employees have been mandated back to 3 days in the office. And a lot of it is pressure on politicians from small business associations, because there is such a big economic impact to not having workers, in the downtown, creating opportunity for these businesses to make money. They're a big contributor to the economy. And when that's gone, that's obviously worrisome. But what we need to recognize is we went from 4% of the global workforce, and similar in Canada, to around 37% of people working remote. There's a lot of what I've been seeing and just rumblings within really large organizations talking about walking back the return to office mandate, because it's had such an impact on morale and such an impact on their top performers leaving, and it's become a retention issue, that we are going to see pendulums swinging in one direction and the next. And we need to be thinking much more strategically around the downtown core and trying to switch to mixed space, realizing that 50% occupancy is probably going to be like this for a long time. So we need to develop more environments where people are drawn back down to the city, creating we need more housing in every single province. So why are we not building more housing in our downtown core and replacing those empty buildings with other types of people who can consume? And that is where we need to be thinking. We can't keep waiting for there to be a complete catastrophic economic impact to our small businesses. We need to be thinking now, as premiers, strategic leaders, on how we're going to prepare for something. We can't jam the toothpaste back in the tube. This is already it's already happening, and corporations are going to do what's best for their bottom line. And if people are walking out, they're going to reverse course on this. And so I strongly urge leaders to be thinking much more forward on what we should be doing in the future of economies and the future of work in our downtown cores.
Kara, one of our listeners, called this morning and left this message on our listener line.
Hi there, my name is Tara Vanderveer, and I live up just north of Winnipeg. I work from home and have worked from home since the pandemic. I work for a great company that allows us flexibility around our scheduling, so I don't have to be sitting at my home desk from 8 to 4, for example. And that helps a lot because I can plan in some wellness breaks or go for a walk or get some groceries done or some chores done while things are open during the day. The downside to working from home, though, is if there's days that I don't have any meetings, I really miss social interaction with my colleagues. I miss, the quote-unquote water cooler talks that can be so generative and so exciting and really knowing what's, going on in people's lives. So that piece, I've had to be very intentional of scheduling in little coffee breaks here and there with my colleagues. And we both, take 15, 20 minutes and just catch up on our days and our families and what we did over the weekend. And our manager is very much in support of that, and that having that camaraderie despite not running into each other in the hallways. So I think if you work for the right company, working from home offers some great flexibility. However, there are certain companies out there that I have worked for that aren't as flexible, and you lose that social aspect, and you lose sort of your autonomy in your own home, which can be really frustrating and really damaging to mental health. So I think with the right company, it's a great fit for me and my family, and I'm very grateful that I do work for such a company. Thanks for asking.
Thanks for answering. It was great to have your call. Okay, we're running out of time here, Jennifer. These calling conversations go quickly. This is a tension point. So what if you are one of those employees who feels they need to have a difficult conversation with your manager who wants you back full time in the office? How do we navigate that?
There is a real tension because there's such polarizing ideas of what is best, and even though there's lots of research to say that having flexibility and agency is probably the most important thing an employee wants, we want to fix what's broken right now. And I think their workforce and work is broken. Work isn't working. And so what I think we need to do as individuals is kind of express what we think is meaningful to us, and also be willing to meet our boss, our employer halfway. I mean, like the other caller said, I have to work. It's a privilege to be able to come in and be able to say, hey, this is what I'm demanding. It's why high performers actually are leaving and able to go. But there's a very specific group of people that are in these very specialized roles that can just leave and find another place and be able to work at that same status and salary. So coming to your employer with all of the data, all of the information, and just say, this is why it works for me. Here are some solutions to how I can make this work. Maybe it is even just a trial. We see, if I'm still meeting those goals and those objectives, does that mean that I can maybe have one day less? What if we reduce it to just core hours at least? I don't have to then commute in, but I can come in for 40% of the time instead of Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Maybe I come in from 10 until 3 days a week or 4 days a week. And a lot of that kind of ability to come to a middle place is much more appealing to a manager and a leader who can advocate that up the chain versus just coming in and saying, I can't do this, I'm inflexible. Both people need to be flexible. Both people need to give each other flexibility. And when we have agency and autonomy, we always have higher well-being across the board.
I can imagine, though, a manager listening going, yes, but I've got, say, 40 people who report to me, 20 people, 10 people. What if they all want something different? What advice do you have for managers?
It's a really difficult spot for managers. They're sandwiched all the time, and we don't realize how little control that managers really have around these policies. I mean, we have, federal governments and provincial governments making these types of decisions. So managers often have very little leeway, and that's unfortunate. But there's ways for us to, as managers and leaders, to be able to communicate that maybe we can't, necessarily determine your return to office mandate, but maybe there's ways that we can have some flexibility on how you work, when you work, with whom you work. We focus a lot on the where, which is what we're just hyper fixated on. The where, where we're working. Is it remote, in person, hybrid? But there's a lot of other W's, I say it, that there's a lot of other ways that we can provide people that level of agency that at least says, I might not be able to fix the policy, but I can make work a little bit better for you. And I'm going to do whatever is in my power to do that. And let's come up with a solution together.
Jennifer Moss, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and expertise with us today.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Jennifer Moss is an author of the upcoming book, Why Are We Here? Why Are We Here is the title of the book that she's working on. She's also a speaker who specializes in the areas of workplace culture and well-being. Luckily, Faith Fundal is here. And we know why.
Why am I here?
Why are you here? You are here to tell us what's coming up on Up to Speed.
Yes, we have lots of things on the show today. The news of the day we will reflect, of course. We'll hear from the RCMP and the one-year anniversary of the Carberry bus crash. CBC Chief Correspondent Adrienne Arsenault also joins us to talk more about a feature interview she did with Canadian icon Celine Dion on love, loss, and living with an extremely rare neurological disorder. And we're also going to hear from hip-hop group Super Duty Tough Work. It's released 2 albums in the group's career and received 2 Polaris Music Prize long list nominations. A pretty solid record track, we would say. We'll hear from the band leader and MC Brendan Gray about what the latest accolade means to him. So it's going to be a very fun show today.
Yeah, it sounds fun. Thank you so much, Faith.
Thank you.
Faith hosts Up to Speed. You can catch it between 3 and 6 p.m. here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, anywhere you are, on the CBC Listen app, on your CBC News app, and you can go back and watch this program anytime you want on our YouTube channel, CBC Manitoba's YouTube channel. Just look under live streams. Thank you so much for joining us today. Remember, the conversation always continues here. You can leave a comment or a message anytime at 204-788-3797. We love to hear from you. We love to hear what you're thinking of the show and what issues you think we should tackle in our call-in conversations. I want to thank all the people who make this show possible. Kevin Nipatebo is handling all things related to putting us on YouTube today. Thanks for watching on YouTube. Dylan Longhurst is our studio technician. Wendy Parker is juggling the phones and directing everything beautifully in the studio. Thanks for listening today. We'll chat with you tomorrow. Coming up next, it's Quirks and Quarks. Have a great day.